Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me once again is my Forbes colleague, staff writer Zach Everson. Zach, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me on, Brittany.
We have talked about Alt5 Sigma before, and this is the fintech company that struck that billion-dollar deal with World Liberty Financial, the Trump-backed crypto venture. And you've reported on various shakeups with the company, as well as some potential violations to SEC rules over the reported timing of when people left the company versus when Alt5 Sigma told the SEC they in fact left. So fill in the details a little bit for us here. Bring us up to speed on what we need to know about Alt5 Sigma.
So the first thing, they came to my attention when they struck that deal that you referenced with Donald Trump's World Liberty Financial. Now, World Liberty Financial is the crypto venture that he and his sons started along with the Witikoffs, and that Alt5 Sigma acquired about $1.5 billion worth of the World Liberty Financial token. Now, that's a token that has no financial backing at all. It is just a token. It doesn't come with any interest in any sort of ownership. It is just you own the token, and that allows you to vote on issues concerning World Liberty Financial. So Alt5 Sigma decided that it wanted to acquire $1.5 billion worth of this token, half of which it raised through selling more shares. The other half was in a stock swap with World Liberty Financial, where World Liberty got about 1 million shares along with some warrants for the stock. And then it actually runs even deeper than that, whereas Zach Witikoff, one of the World Liberty Financial co-founders, now chairs Alt5 Sigma's board. Another World Liberty Financial co-founder, Zach Folkman, is on the board. And Eric Trump, who's a co-founder of World Liberty, is a strategic advisor and observer to the board for Alt5 Sigma. So you've got a lot of ties right there. So what really struck out to me early on after that deal got announced was that Alt5 Sigma filed a document with the SEC saying that it had suspended its CEO, or Peter Tasiopoulos, effective mid-October, which stands out. They didn't give any sort of reason. So you've got this company with a lot of money tied up with the Trumps, and it just suspends its CEO for not giving any sort of reason in the SEC disclosure. So, and then it turns out they actually suspended him about 6 weeks before they admitted doing so. We got to see an internal email that went out to staffers there on September 4th saying that he had actually been placed on leave then, as had another top official who wasn't mentioned in the SEC filings.
And I want to talk a little bit more about this email because this is at the heart of one of potentially the inconsistencies of when staffers left or got pushed out versus when the SEC was told about it. And you're reporting that 2 executives who signed this email and the acting CEO named in the email are either out of the company now or their roles are greatly reduced. Talk to us about the contents of this email and what happened to those 3 staffers.
Yeah, so the email came from Ron Pitters, was the one who posted it or sent it, and he was the chief operating officer and is the director of the company. And it was signed by Dan Danziger, who was a director of the company, and it named Jonathan Hugh as the acting CEO. Now, that was the document on September 4th saying that these people were placed on leave. There would be a special investigation. Don't talk to the press. Then on the filing to the SEC on October 16th, that was signed by Jonathan Hugh. Now, right around Thanksgiving week, we find out that those 3 people are either gone, as you said, or in greatly reduced roles. Hugh has been ousted. He was only acting CEO for a few weeks. And even before that, he had just joined the company a few weeks before that as the chief financial officer. Now, he's totally gone. Pitters, they ended his consulting contract. So he is no longer COO. He is remaining as a director. And then they also said that they accepted Danziger's resignation. That was the only one that they actually gave a reason for. He said he was just resigning for personal reasons. There was no sort of dispute with the company there. They didn't give any sort of background at all for Pitters or Hugh, other than saying for Hugh, it was without cause.
And so there's another inconsistency that you and I have talked about before. It was when an accountant working with Alt5 Sigma, when they left, there's also NASDAQ told Alt5 Sigma that it no longer meets the listing requirements after the company missed its 3rd quarter report. Talk to us about that. And is that the reason we're seeing these staffing shakeups, or is it a cocktail of all of these problems combined?
Well, let me answer that one first. We don't know. I've reached out. They haven't given any answers as to why these people were dismissed. Um, Said beyond the scant stuff that was in that SEC filing, but there have been a lot of other issues there. So back in August, their accountant Hudgens informed them that they would not be. They were stepping down from this line of work and would not be able to continue. That's what Hudgens told me. I asked Hudgens about that after the company had said in November that Hudgens has resigned effective immediately. So I went out and was like, hey, why did you resign? What's going on with these issues? And they're like, hey, we resigned months ago. Like, we don't know why they're saying this now. And we don't know why the document said we're retiring. We're not retiring. We're just stepping back from auditing public companies. And what drove the inquiry also to the accountant in the first place was that the company, Alt5 Sigma, is yet to file its report for the third quarter. So it originally missed the deadline, filed something with the SEC, saying, hey, we're running a few days late, we're going to need some extra time. And then afterwards, like, hey, we can't get to that at all. We outlined a whole bunch of issues we had discussed previously. We're still going through those, and we have problems with our accountant. So that was the reason that led to NASDAQ threatening to delist them, in that they have not filed their third quarter report yet. So we've got a lot to wait for this company. We're still trying to find out, if Tassiopoulos, the original CEO who was suspended, if he's coming back. Last I knew, he was still a director on the board. We're waiting on this third quarter report to come back, and also any sort of information about packages that were paid out to Pitters or Hugh. The company said, if it is required to report those, it would do so in a future filing.
And NASDAQ saying to Alt5 Sigma, hey, you are non-compliant right now. If you don't get this third quarter filing in soon, you're going to be delisted. How serious is that? I mean, it sounds pretty serious to me. That's one bucket. The other bucket is the potential SEC violations. How serious are those? And will the SEC investigate? And what does the punishment look like? Let's start with NASDAQ, though.
So I asked a couple of securities experts who I talked to about this, and they said it is unusual for companies to miss this sort of thing. It's not a good sign of a healthy company. That's actually, in general, what Alt5 Sigma's former accountant, William Hudgens, told me, is just like, yeah, it's not typically a good sign if they're missing these filings. As for whether there's any sort of repercussions, the SEC under Donald Trump has not really done much. I believe there's only actually been like one accountant firm that's been investigated all year, and that was during the brief period of 2025 that Biden was president. And, here we've got a company that has deep ties to Donald Trump's financial interests. So, should there be an investigation? There's certainly a lot of things to look at here. Will there be investigation? It doesn't seem likely.
And I think the next question has to be, who is running Alt5 Sigma right now? Is there a CEO? Do they have this robust C-suite? What does that really look like?
So a guy by the name of Tony Isaac has stepped back into the acting CEO role. He had been CEO for about 8 or 9 years earlier. He is the company's president. He has reclaimed that top spot while they figure out what's going on with CEO. And he is, they've said he has not taken a salary while he's doing that. There was nothing they needed to report about financial arrangements with him. Now, the CFO was actually, is a temp. They hired somebody who has a company that helps public companies when they have a short-term need for a CFO. So that's who they've brought in for that role. So I would expect to get new announcements on both of those positions and who's going to permanently fill them sometime soon.
And Zach, correct me if I'm wrong here, but we do work at a business magazine. That's not the part where you need to correct me. I know that is true. But when you see this sort of turnover in a business, CEO, then acting CEO, then they're out, then the old guy's in, how normal is that? I mean, and what does that really indicate to you?
Yeah, it doesn't strike me as all that normal. Now, while we do work at a business magazine, most of my experience is covering politics and money in politics. And I'll tell you, from looking at it from my background with political campaigns, when you see a lot of turnover like this at the top, it's usually because things are going haywire. Again, not sure that's what's happening here, but it's definitely not a good sign when you see people coming in and out of the company very quickly, deadlines missed, and just sort of all sorts of inconsistencies between what they're reporting to regulators and what we're hearing about from internal sources.
To that point, yeah, from my realm of covering politics, when you see staffing shakeups or a revolving door of staff, that's never really the best sign. But has anyone closer to Trump's orbit, have they been affected by this at all?
Not that I know of. It hasn't. Eric Trump has stayed in his current positions with the company. as a strategic advisor and independent observer of the board, to best of our knowledge. It doesn't, they haven't sold any of their World Liberty Financial. It doesn't look like World Liberty Financial's done anything with its Alt5 Sigma stock. So everything looks to be about the status quo there. We have seen the price of World Liberty Financial has gone down a bit. Last I saw it was about 15 cents. What Alt5 Sigma originally acquired for about $1.5 billion was worth like 1.1, 1.2 billion. So they have seen it decrease there. Also of interest, their market cap was below 200 million last I checked. So here they are sitting on over $1 billion of this token, but the market's only valuing the company at around 200 million. So you've got a little bit of a disconnect going on right there.
And you cover money in politics, and specifically, you focus on the Trump family and President Trump since he's been in political power. What specifically does this staffing shakeup, the chaos within Alt5 Sigma, what does that do for them financially?
Not all that much, as long as they continue to sit on that token and keep it out of going into supply and possibly lowering the price of that. It doesn't seem to matter all that much. But, if the company starts running into more troubles, if some of those coins were to actually end up on the market at some point, that could be problematic.
And as of right now, are there any problems? Are there any big question marks that are still looming over Alt5 Sigma that you're going to be tracking for the rest of 2025 and into 2026?
Yeah, the main one is that third quarter report. Where is it? What's it going to say? They mentioned that they have some legal issues going on with a subsidiary in Rwanda. Are we going to get more details about that? Are there any sort of financial information here that's not all that great? Like, it should be pretty stable with what's going on with their connection to World Liberty Financial. But what about their other businesses? How's that shaking up? Will it have any sort of information about other turnovers in executives?
And if there's not a third quarter report yet, what does that mean for the fourth quarter report? Is that going to be filed in a timely manner?
You've got me on that one. I mean, they have the NASDAQ gave them up until I believe it was January 21st to put forward a report into how they will get back into compliance. So, that remains to be seen.
And then what has Alt5 Sigma said to you about all of your reporting?
Yeah, they haven't said that much. They have responded a couple times to some of these questions that we've asked. They disagreed with how I was describing the token that they have. They also, at one point I asked about who their accountant was, and they said no comment, which seems like a pretty easy question to answer. That was in that little period in between when I heard their previous accountant quit and when they said that the person had quit. But otherwise, yeah, they really haven't said all that much. It is interesting in that they do seem to share a spokesperson with World Liberty Financial. I sent these questions to the spokesperson for World Liberty Financial, and they came back and said, attribute these to an Alt5 Sigma spokesperson. So I guess we're seeing one more way those firms are intertwined.
Well, Zach, I always appreciate your reporting here. And as we see more developments when it comes to Alt5 Sigma and World Liberty Financial too, I hope you come back on and break it down with me. Thanks for the time.
Of course. Thanks for having me.